with regards to the application process, I want to put this out to Mabel, but not maybe myself, and Mr. McKee, um, because as of right now, that's very relevant for all of us seniors who are currently applying. How do we manage everything that goes into this application, along with everything else we're doing, and it's all, confusing and strange?
Yeah, well, one thing that I wish I had figured out earlier on, but now that it's the 14th of November, starting to get the pressure's a little high. But I think one thing that's important to do is to start early, especially with the Common App and with the UC apps. The questions are usually pretty similar year to year. And so I think if like over the summer after your junior year, even if you just jot down a couple of ideas of like things that have happened to you or stories that are important or experiences that you've had, and that way when you have to start actually writing stuff down, you have kind of a springboard. And I think the other thing is that you shouldn't feel bad about using the same essay for multiple applications. It's actually way easier that way, I found, because I was like, oh man, I need to be special for every college, so I need to write a different essay, like depending on what certain colleges are looking for. Um, but that would just make you stressed out, and then you'll have crappy essays, and then that'll be sad for you. And the other thing is that if you do something, if you volunteer somewhere just because you think it's going to look good on college apps, that's probably not the best move, especially if you decide to write an essay about it, because the admissions counselors are going to see that, and they're what they're really looking for is passion. And I'm sure Mr. McKee has something tons to say about this also, because it's part of his job. But at least from a perspective of someone trying to get into college now, I know that if I just write an essay about something dumb that I did because I just did it, it's not going to have the same emotion and the same showing of like how I am as a person for an essay.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at least for me, I have the amazing reality that my parents have been thinking about what my college future is going to look like since I was like in 8th grade, and they started having me do SAT prep then, which was insane at the time. But yeah, I started working on my college essays earlier, just kind of thinking, jotting down, okay, what's important to me, right? Or what would if I had to tell these colleges anything about myself, what would I be telling them, right? And at the end of the day, that's all you have to do. And it's at least thinking about what you want to talk about is usually not too hard. Of course, getting down to the nitty gritty of actually writing it, you can spend some time there. But you can, no matter what grade you're in, you could always be thinking about this stuff, and you probably already are, just not consciously realizing that you can use it for college applications. All right, so it's all out there.
The only other thing I wanted to add to that is kind of I don't know, the thing that I was thinking about a lot when I went through this is I just found months and months trying to figure out what the person that was going to be reading my essay wanted to read. And I just felt like very, very kind of, for lack of a better term, it just felt unnatural. Like I was trying to write something that would fit a mold of what I thought the person would want to read. And for months, it just was super difficult for me to actually get that down on paper. And it just didn't really feel right. And then I can't remember actually who gave me the advice, but they're like, they just want to know who you are. I'm like, wow, okay. And then it's like wrote an essay in a day, and like that was it, right? Because I just didn't really think of it as pressure. I didn't really think of the weight of what that application was going to be, because that just puts you in a mental state where you get so constrained and you just like, oh, I can't use that word. I need to go on, thesaurus.com and find like the 16th one down to find like a unique term that no one else is going to use. It's like, no, like you're just overthinking it, right? Like they just want to know who you are. And once I made that mental switch of like, I just need to put myself on paper, it just felt like a journal entry, right? And then when I submitted that, I was like, oh, like that's who I was. Like that's not some boilerplate thing I found online. And that gave me a lot of confidence. I don't know. That helped me to kind of get my thoughts out on paper, but I'm not sure if, I mean, again, I know a lot of friends that went to a lot of like counseling or college services where they had like a person help them write the essay, but that wasn't available to me. So I just kind of pivoted and did it that way.
And yeah, just to bounce off of that, I'm sure Ben would agree, but coming to college and then I had a conversation with some friends about what they ended up writing for their college apps, and we were all kind of just laughing about it because A, that was just like a difficult, stressful time in our lives, and we're glad that it's done, but also like so insanely different. And like the reason that everyone is at your university is never ever going to be the same reason that you're there. And so really like it doesn't do you any good to stress out what someone might want, just kind of what Ben said. Like it makes your life so much easier to just talk about what you want to talk about. And then if they accept you, then they accept you. And if they don't, someone else who wants you more will accept you and you'll probably be happier there. And that being said, just kind of with the stress of it, one of my biggest pieces of advice that we ended up doing in high school, I just remember this, is like, if you're thinking about college, people probably around you are thinking about college and probably getting stressed from like the end of junior year to like the end of senior year, like realistically. And that's a horrible mindset and mental state to be in, to just be constantly stressed. And so, honestly, at one point, like obviously everything right now is virtual, but like when we had lunch on the front lawn, like my friend group and I like made it a thing that like we weren't going to talk about college during lunch, period. Because we needed something like a mental break to just not be thinking about it all the time and like comparing yourself to others. And I think really just taking a deep breath and taking a step back and finding people that you can talk about things that aren't college, things about that aren't college with people who might not be applying to college right now or like are older or are younger or are just your friends who are able to like put a barrier there and not have to talk about it 24/7 really helped me kind of deal with the stresses of applications. Because I just remember like this is like a personal anecdote, but like I came home one day from school and I was just so upset and I started crying. My mom was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I'm not applying to Ivy Leagues." And she was like, "Do you want to go to an Ivy League?" And I was like, no, like I don't. I was trying to stay in California, which worked out. But it was just funny because I just felt so overwhelmed from like my friends were applying to Ivy Leagues. They're like, why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? So just taking a deep breath and like finding things that aren't college apps, if it's going on a run, if it's going to walk your dog, whatever it might be, and just taking a deep breath because that will really help you like get centered and be able to like make it through this college application process.
Josh, there's a question in Q&A that I think is pretty applicable to what we're talking about right now. It says, when should you start applying to colleges and when should you finish your college list? So there's multiple different admissions periods for colleges. So there's early action, and then there's also early decision, and then regular decision. And I guess it kind of really just depends on what you want. Like I'm doing mostly early action because I want to know sooner rather than later where I'm getting in. But I'm also finding I'm trying to run track in college, and so there were some colleges that I didn't even know about when I started doing early action, and then they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, this is what our program's about. Like these are the majors we have." I was like, "Wow, that's actually really cool. I think I'll apply to this college too." So I don't really think there's a specific time where you need to like finish your college list. It's always a work in progress. Even now that I'm in November of my senior year, I'm still looking at other colleges. And, I guess technically the deadline for regular decision is late January, I think. So once you hit the point where no colleges are accepting applications anymore, I think that's when you finish your college list. And even then, you could, take a couple months off of school after your senior year or take a year off and then reevaluate and apply to more colleges. So really your college list is never finished until I guess you end up going to a college. But it's never too late. Even if you think it is, like you still have time to figure something out.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing too, which probably isn't talked about as much, is that there are a lot of colleges out there who have rolling admissions, which basically means you apply anytime throughout your senior year, and within 3 weeks is typically the timeline. They'll get back to you and let you know. So I've had students in the past, do early action, early decision, or typically early action, and then maybe regular decision applications, and maybe they didn't get into the schools that they wanted to, and so they can just go ahead and in March or later apply to a school that's rolling admission too, and they'll know in a few weeks. But as far as I think the original question was kind of about organization and planning and how you can do that. I strongly recommend that you create just like a Google sheet for yourselves and like list out like the colleges, the application deadline, the if they require an essay, how many, what those are supposed to be about, if they require letters of recommendation. So I know that there's like a lot of overwhelming details, but I think keeping it all organized in some manner will help you, will help manage that stress a little bit. And whether it's organizing it by how many essays you have to write or when the application due dates are, I think that can really help you take this big process and break it down into more bite-sized, manageable pieces. There's other things too, like for me personally, when I was applying to colleges, I had no interest in writing extra essays. So I just decided I'm just going to apply to, I'm going to apply to CSUs. I guess I did write an essay for my UC, but that was one essay that I had to write for all of the UCs that I applied to. Now they do personal insight questions, which are actually better, in my opinion. But it was like, minimal writing for a maximum number of schools that I could apply to. And so that was just how I wanted to navigate it. I was taking challenging senior classes, and it just didn't seem like a good balance of time for me. I know I've talked to a lot of seniors in the past few years, and they are taking very rigorous course loads, plus their college applications that they're juggling. It's a lot to manage. So figure out your bandwidth and then figure out how much you can do, and that can really help you make decisions about where or what you want to apply to.